When is justice served? The state of Oregon is grappling with that question, with more inmates asking for clemency. But some of their crimes include murder, and some victims' families can't believe this is even being considered.
If she gets released from jail, it's not like my dad's going to show up at our door and it's all over with. You know, he's gone forever.
And after years of setbacks, Portland may finally take another step toward putting body cameras on officers. The question remains, who gets to see the footage and when? And later.
I want to see more Black women designing outdoor apparel. We just don't exist there.
Expressions in Black and one woman's push to help Black Oregonians conquer the outdoors. Here's the story.
Hey everybody, I'm Maggie Vespa. Welcome to The Story. What a Monday, right? It really feels like a Monday. And frankly, our team was talking about this. We don't know if it's something kind of weather related or if it's like leftover football anxiety from an actually exciting weekend for the NFL. But people are coming in real hot today, and they're coming in on hot mics.
Do you think your place is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a...
That was example one, okay? We obviously do not condone, we want to point this out, politicians belittling journalists in any capacity, but frankly, we just wanted to play that clip because the energy kind of seems to be universal. Case in point, another hot take on a knowingly hot mic, courtesy of Oregon's outgoing Senate President, Peter Courtney.
Yeah, it's been hell, but you know what? I asked for the job, and life is hell, and then you die.
Oh my gosh. All right, so why not? Let's repeat that and let's make it our quote of the day on this Monday. Life is hell and then you die. Lovely. Oregon's outgoing Senate President Peter Courtney there. Thank you, sir. Thank you to OPB as well. Really inspiring stuff. Let us know what you think of that lighthearted mantra or frankly anything else you see on the show. Contact info, per usual, is at the bottom of your screen. You can email thestory@kgw.com or you can use the hashtag #TheStoryKGW. Keep your quotes and your takes as hot as you like. And that in mind, let's get started. All right, tonight's big story on a very serious note has to do with justice. Who gets it? What does that look like? And in cases of horrible tragedy, is justice even attainable? Big questions for a Monday. So we're going to focus in on one case. It's a murder that happened almost 20 years ago in Yamhill County. Dale Rost III was murdered in his home in Sheridan in 2005, and the crime was horrifying. Rost was stripped naked, he was tied up, he was robbed, his house was ransacked, all before he was shot in the head. His teenage daughter found him dead when he didn't show up for Christmas, and the people who killed him didn't even know him before they made him their target.
Lindley said, you know, we have to kill him. If we don't kill him, we're going to get caught. And so they shot my dad in the head and left. And I'm the one who went to my dad's house and found him the way that Lindley left him, naked, tied up, and shot in the head, lying in a pool of his own blood on his living room floor.
So one of the people who killed Dale Rost is Lindley Rayburn. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, and right now it's been about 15 years. And she wants out of prison. Rayburn says she wants to repair relationships with her family. She wants to put the skills she's learned in prison to work in the real world, and she wants to take care of her health. Her clemency application says she was abused throughout her entire life, but she's had good behavior during her time in prison, and she's taken several classes and learned new job skills. Rayburn also says the day of the murder, she had been using meth with her boyfriend, A.J. Smith. Smith was also convicted in this case. In fact, Rayburn says he's the one who pulled the trigger, not her. Dale Rost's daughters say they looked at her clemency application and they didn't feel like she was taking accountability for their father's death.
She got this opportunity with Governor Brown in this clemency program, releasing all of these criminals, and she thought, hey, I should give this a shot. And that's basically where we're at. And the fact that Governor Brown is even considering this is absurd.
So let's dive into why she's considering this. The district attorney for Yamhill County, who handled this case back in 2005, says this application is indeed part of a trend. Recently, there's been an uptick in clemency requests going to the governor's desk.
I don't have the exact numbers to go on, but I bet in the last year to 2 years, I've received more copies of more clemency applications than I did in the 23 years as the elected DA, the previous 23 years as the elected. So it's clear that something has changed, and I believe it's likely from how adults in custody view their chances of a favorable review by the governor's office.
We reached out to Governor Kate Brown's office, and they told us, quote, our office has received a clemency application from Lindley Rayburn, and that application is currently under review. To be clear, they added, the governor has not yet made a decision on this case. And they went on saying Governor Brown believes that granting clemency is an extraordinary act that should be reserved for individuals who have made incredible changes and who are dedicated to making their communities better. She evaluates clemency applications on a case-by-case basis and considers a variety of factors. Now, throughout the last few years, Oregon lawmakers have made big changes when it comes to keeping people behind bars, even for violent crimes. Governor Brown actually has given out more than 900 commutations. Most of those were people released early because of COVID-19. At the end of last year, we told you about her decision to commute the sentences of 74 people convicted of violent crimes as teenagers. And several laws have also been passed that offer people convicted of crimes new avenues to have their cases and their sentences examined. Now, supporters of these changes say reforming the criminal justice system is necessary, and they say prisons are overcrowded and too often filled with people who came from marginalized or traumatic backgrounds. And they also say that making these changes is a step closer to social justice. But as is the case in this situation, each one of these cases is complicated, and each one leaves people hurting and hoping for justice for the person they lost. All right, let's turn our attention now to another aspect of justice involving law enforcement. On Wednesday, the Portland City Council is expected to move one step closer to equipping officers with body-worn cameras. The council will open up bidding on a $2.6 million contract for body cams, which will cover both a pilot program and full implementation. As we've been reporting, Portland is the only big city police department that does not have these. So let's bring in Kyle Aboshi, who's been tracking this issue for us. So Kyle, I mean, bottom line, like, when do we think, because this is the question that always comes up, when do we actually think Portland police will get these body cameras?
Well, nobody's holding their breath here, but the latest estimates suggest maybe this summer for the initial rollout. About 175 body cams will be tested during the pilot program. Then, if all goes well, the full police force would get body cams by late next year or 2023. The city provided an updated timeline on Friday when it posted its request for bids. The city is looking for a contractor that can provide about 800 body cams along with storage. That's the expensive part.
Gotcha. But as you've been reporting, it's not really the money that's been slowing things down. It's more like the politics and the negotiations, specifically between the city and the police union, right?
Exactly. Body cam policies have been a huge sticking point between the police union and the city as they try to reach a contract agreement. The union has proposed allowing officers to review footage before writing reports. The idea is they'll be more accurate. Civil rights advocates argue that's just not fair. Officers can craft their story around the video. Now, last night, this very topic came up during a community discussion, and the police union president explained.
Our officers, they may engage, they may respond in a certain way, and they're like, man, I know something happened that made me do this thing. I remember seeing something come towards my head, something like that. And so having pre-review, again, helps the officer fully understand the entirety of it and can put together the entirety of what happened. And again, no one is sitting here saying that we should be able to edit video. I've seen some of that. Like we want the truth to be fully, concretely, and in the most cumulative way, concretely put together so that we can tell the public what happened and they can see it and they can understand for themselves.
For context, most police agencies in Oregon allow officers to look at the video before writing reports. Oregon State Police, Gresham, Forest Grove, Beaverton, Eugene. That really is standard practice for all of them.
All right, good to know. Kyle Aboshi, thank you. So given that this is the show where we ask you nightly for your emails, it probably goes without saying that we get a lot of emails. And this one actually was a bit odd. It kind of stood out. On Friday, Portland City Auditor Mary Hole Caballero emailed several reporters and news outlets kind of out of the blue. At least it seemed that way at first, until we read this. Quote, recent media reports about a lawsuit against the city of Portland misrepresented the role of the independent police review in Portland's police accountability system. She goes on to say IPR investigates accusations of misconduct and delivers recommendations, but adds IPR does not decide whether a PPB officer violated policy or how they should be disciplined. That is the, quote, exclusive responsibility of the police commissioner, meaning Portland's mayor, and the police chief. Now, news junkies knew what she was talking about. And actually, it's a story that we think is definitely worth your time. It was published last week in the Oregonian. The headline, Portland police reject federal judge's contempt finding that officers used excessive force at protest. So in this, the O quoted court filings from a lawsuit tied to the racial justice protests of 2020. That suit was filed in federal court by the nonprofit Don't Shoot Portland. And we should note the Oregonian reported it was lawyers for the nonprofit who in their court filings really took aim at IPR. It's also, by the way, the same lawsuit that prompted Portland police to issue something of a surprise mea culpa and publicly release this violent meme a couple of weeks ago. It seems to show a police officer in riot gear beating a protester, jokingly calling that protester a dirty hippie. The meme was included in a police training presentation back in 2018. The mayor and police chief have both said they were horrified by this, and they are now investigating. Now, speaking of investigations, here's where we kind of pump the brakes for a second and bring it back to the auditor and that email and her point about who holds police accountable. Because you see, in those court filings dug up by the Oregonian, reporters found this. It's a transcript of an interview between an attorney for Don't Shoot Portland and a Portland police captain with the Bureau's Professional Standards Division. The attorney asked if the city has reprimanded or disciplined any member of the Portland Police Bureau for excessive force during the protests on a number of dates scattered throughout June, July, August, and September of 2020. Captain Jeffrey Bell says he's not aware of any officers being disciplined, so seems like a no. And that's a timely detail because amid all of this talk about protests, you, the viewers, had resurrected a years-old story asking us about the investigation into this clip. Remember this? Early June 2020, Portland's protests had just begun, as they had across the country, and a Portland police SUV, seeing protesters move barricades in the street, there it went, speeds toward them. Sky 8 caught it live while we were on the air. The city got several complaints about this, calling it excessive force, and the investigation was underway. Well, tonight, we can tell you that investigation is indeed finished. IPR passed it along to the mayor and police chief who make the decisions, as you heard in these cases. We've asked the mayor and the Bureau for the results of that investigation, and we filed a public records request. We will absolutely keep you posted, but we do want to point out if that transcript dug up by the Oregonian is any hint, we'll be surprised if any officers tied to that incident were disciplined. Okay, let's turn now to something many of us, for obvious reasons, don't like to talk about because it's hard and it's heartbreaking, but frankly, we think it's really important. More than 3,600 children under the age of 13 have died by suicide in the past 2 decades, that's according to the CDC. And when it comes to black kids, the rates are even higher. So tonight, we're starting the conversation with a 3-part series from our sister station in Atlanta called A Different Cry. And we do want to warn you, this story contains racist language and graphic descriptions of death by suicide involving children. Here's reporter Madison Carter.
77 days of the first time my son was bullied to the day he died. 77 days in between there.
7 Bridges died by suicide. He was 10 years old.
The very first thing, a little girl called him a on the bus. And then, fast forward to next week, he's on the bus and the little girl says, well, you know that can't fight. He gets off the bus, runs to his dad and says, Daddy, I got choked on the bus, but don't be mad because I think he has a mental problem. He died of being bullied to death. Wow, my kid.
At least 3,600 children under the age of 13 died by suicide in the past 2 decades.
There's this idea when you're young, developmentally, you may not understand the permanency of suicide. I don't think sometimes that kids understand there's no coming back from this. This is much younger children.
Black children under 13 are dying by suicide at rates 2 times higher than their white peers.
People always say black people don't do that. Yes, here's a picture.
Research shows bullying and racism played a role in most of these suicides.
I do think black parents in particular, we try to educate our kids about what it means to be black and how people are going to engage you in the world. I don't know that we're able to give them the full extent and teach them to the full degree of what those struggles are going to be like. What parent expects to have a race conversation with a child and the child is 5, 6 years old?
I never took the time to teach my son about racial differences, racial inequalities. I never did that because he was 10. I want this little boy to be a little boy. Come on, 7.
That was Madison Carter reporting. If you or someone you know is in crisis, the Suicide Prevention Hotline is available 24 hours a day. That number is on your screen. It's 1-800-273-8255.
105 years ago, Washington and Oregon joined forces to build a bridge across the Columbia River, connecting the 2 states. 105 years later, and we still have the same bridge. So, is it ever going to get replaced? Good question. We do finally have some renderings of what a new bridge could look like. When the story continues.
Welcome back, y'all. Send in those questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or use that hashtag #TheStoryKGW on Twitter. Dave did. We got this email from him. He wrote, lots of talk about funding infrastructure. What about the I-5 bridge replacement? Does anyone care? Dave, we care. We absolutely care. That's a great question. Here's some background, by the way. The interstate bridge between Portland and Vancouver was built in 1917. I did not know it was that old until researching this story. Experts say it will likely collapse in a big earthquake. So right now, literally as we speak, an Oregon legislative committee is getting briefed on the bridge replacement project, which has actually been in the works for more than a year now. The latest step is releasing 3D renderings of what that new bridge could look like. Tim Gordon has a look.
Well, these designs both have something to do with how the traffic flows. Will it be like the interstate bridge where there are two bridge spans for northbound and then southbound, or will it be a double-decker design? About a year and a half into the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, and design possibilities are taking shape. At a Thursday meeting of the Executive Steering Group, Vancouver Mayor Anne McInerney Ogle was eager to see new 3D images before the main presentation even began.
Can we take a look at some of those? I know they're pretty high-level design options, but I think it's important that we have the opportunity to kind of start looking.
And now we have even more angles of the two directions the replacement bridge may be taking.
We have examples of two of our design options.
Stacked or side-by-side decks, as explained by civil design lead Brad Phillips.
This is a one bridge solution because they're on top of each other. And this other version is two separate bridges with a gap in the middle.
And those represent some of the ideas and the options that are out there.
Greg Johnson is administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. He says the images help engineers and decision makers come up with plans, and they want your input. So,
for the public, the general public, these 3D graphics are tremendously helpful in picturing how this thing looks. So, yeah, we're going to be trying to get those things out as soon as they are developed.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
There is no doubt the interstate bridge will eventually need to be replaced. We took a tour a few months back to see how it's being maintained, climbing all the way to the top of the original span built in 1917. Experts say the old bridge would most likely fall apart in a major Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. A new bridge would be up to current seismic standards and will also make room for a shared use path and for mass transit. You can see those represented by the colored lanes in the graphics. So, does Johnson have a preference yet based on what he sees? Here's the diplomatic answer.
Both versions have pluses and minuses. And so we're trying to work through and balance all of those things together and see what comes out.
Based on our conversation, I think Johnson favors the double-decker design just because it's a little less impact on the Columbia River. But again, no decisions have been made. They're looking to come up with a preferred alternative, their first choice, by mid-March. Then there's a whole lot of approval and funding to come. And if it all goes through, they could break ground sometime in mid-2025. In Vancouver, Tim Gordon, KGW News.
Welcome back. We want to take a couple of minutes and point the spotlight toward another show here on KGW that we're really proud of. It's called Expressions in Black, courtesy of Heart and Hustle Productions. It's a series of documentary shorts that air every Monday night at 7 here on KGW. And each short tells the story of one Black Oregonian thriving and sharing their Black excellence, as the production team describes. Here's a preview of tonight's episode, and the subject is Jocelyn Rice, founder of the outdoor apparel company Black Earth United.
Like just walking outside and putting my feet in the grass, really bringing it back to the very, very basics. It's just so incredibly peaceful, and it is nothing but mine in that moment. It's inside of all of us, but because we have so many other devices around and so many other things going on, like we don't pay as much of attention to it as we used to. When I was working in corporate, I couldn't get my ideas through. They weren't understanding the different connections I was trying to make, understanding that nature and outdoors can mean different things to different people. For me, my hair was a barrier to me getting outside. I wanted to make sure that I was figuring out a way to create something that had meaning in it and that was for a new purpose. So the do-rag seemed like the perfect place to do it. I think do-rags are a form of self-expression. This piece is more of one of the activewear pieces. The patterns, the stitching, even how you wear that piece, you can wear it 15 different ways. So if your hair is like it is right now, how do you like to wear it?
I usually tie it around so my puffs can show.
Oh, like out like this, and then that on the top, yep. It has such a rich history to it. It is for us, and it's so personal to Black folks. You could wear this in the gym, you could wear it just out for a light hike. I mean, and that's the beauty of a do-rag too, it's just that it's so different depending on what you're gonna do that day. I wanna see more Black women designing outdoor apparel. Like, we just don't exist there. Let's get over here to the center a little bit. There you go. I want a full-on line. Like, I want rain jackets, I want fishing gear, like I want the whole thing. And Black folks can say, I purchased that from Black Earth United. Have you done this before?
Yeah.
Okay, see, you know what you're doing.
So cool. Again, that's a preview of tonight's Expressions in Black. It airs every Monday at 7 p.m. right here on KGW. We'll be right back. This week's Hey Help campaign, the Humane Society for Southwest Washington. They help pets find loving homes, and they rely completely on donations to help care for the animals in their shelter. If you would like to donate, hold your phone's camera up to the QR code on your screen. You can also go to kgw.com/heyhelp. Pick up your phone, follow us on Twitter at @TheStoryKGW, or email thestory@kgw.com. That does it for this show. Laurel Porter is standing by with the news at 6:30.
This is KGW News at 6:30.